Ethan had always believed that a rancher's life was supposed to be hard, but lately it felt like life was testing him more than usual. His small ranch sat on the edge of a dry valley, surrounded by dusty fields and tired fences that leaned under their own weight. Months of drought had burned the land. The cattle were thinner than they should be, and the grass was short and brittle. Every morning, Ethan woke before the sun, hoping this would be the day things got better. But each day felt the same, quiet, lonely, and heavy with worry. He needed a new horse. His only working mare had grown old, and her joints could barely carry the weight of a saddle anymore. Ethan had pushed her more than he should have because he had no choice. Without a horse, he couldn't manage the cattle, haul supplies, or ride into town. But a new horse was expensive, and Ethan didn't have the money for a good one. He only had enough for something old, half-trained, or a little broken. Still, he saddled the old mare at sunrise and began the slow ride toward the trading post miles away. The air was cool in the early morning, and Ethan kept his hat low over his eyes to block the wind. He tried not to think about the debts waiting for him at home or the empty shelves in his pantry. Instead, he focused on the simple goal of the day: find a cheap horse that could work for at least another year. By the time he reached the trading post, the sun was high and the place was busy. Wagons rattled across the dirt. Traders called out prices. Horses snorted and stamped their hooves inside the fenced corrals. Ethan tied his mare to a post and walked toward the pens, trying to appear calm even though he felt the weight of every dollar he carried in his pocket. He noticed her almost by accident. A young girl sat on the ground near the corner of the corral, her back pressed against the wooden fence. Her clothes were torn, dusty, and far too thin for the weather. Strands of her long hair fell across her face, hiding her eyes. She looked tired, as if she had not slept properly for days. Ethan paused, wondering why she was sitting there alone. But before he could look longer, a loud voice pulled his attention away. "Well, look who finally came to buy something," the horse seller called out. He was a broad man with a rough beard and a loud laugh, the kind of man who knew how to make a person feel small in a crowd. "You looking for a new horse, rancher?" "Something affordable," Ethan replied carefully. The seller grinned and waved him over. "I got just the one, strong as a bull, only a little lame in the back leg, but for the price, she's a bargain." Ethan frowned. A lame horse was no help on a struggling ranch. Still, he followed the man to the pen to have a look. The mare inside was thin with dull eyes and a limp. Ethan knew immediately she wouldn't last long. "She's worth half what you're asking," Ethan said, trying to remain polite. The seller shrugged. "Take it or leave it." Ethan sighed and turned away. He didn't want to waste his money. Maybe he could come back another week, or buy from another town. He stepped away from the pen, ready to leave, when he felt movement behind him. The girl in rags had stood up. Before Ethan could say anything, she walked toward him with small, careful steps, as if afraid someone might stop her. When she reached him, she kept her head down. Her voice was soft, almost too quiet to hear. "Please," she whispered, "take me instead." Ethan froze, unsure if he heard her correctly. He looked around, but no one seemed to pay attention except the horse seller, who was busy arguing with another trader. "What did you say?" Ethan asked gently. She lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were tired but full of fear. "Please take me with you. I'll work. I'll do anything. Just take me away from here." Ethan's heart tightened. He didn't know who she was or why she was so desperate. He wanted to ask her many questions, but before he could speak, a harsh voice shouted from behind the corrals. "Lily!" The girl flinched so violently that Ethan instinctively stepped in front of her. Two men walked toward them with angry expressions. One was tall and thin with a long coat. The other was heavy and broad like the horse seller, with arms too big for his sleeves. Their eyes were fixed on the girl, and she shrank back as they drew closer. "What are you doing talking to him?" the tall man demanded. "You're supposed to be cleaning the stalls." The girl said nothing, but Ethan could see her shaking. "She's with us," the heavy man said, stepping closer. You don't need to worry about her. Ethan kept his voice calm. She came to me asking for help. Is something wrong? The tall man glared. She's a troublemaker, always trying to run off. She owes us work. That's all you need to know. Ethan didn't know the full story, but something in the way the girl clung to his sleeve made him think she wasn't lying. He spoke softly to her. What's your name? Lily, she whispered. Are you being hurt? He asked quietly. She didn't answer with words, but her eyes told him more than enough. The heavy man laughed. Don't go getting ideas, rancher. She's just some stray. Her folks owed money and she's paying off their debt. She stays with us. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had heard stories like this before. Poor families sometimes left children behind when they couldn't pay back loans. It wasn't right, but it happened in some parts of the frontier. Still, the fear on Lily's face didn't look like simple hardship. It looked like someone who wanted to escape something much worse. Lily gripped the edge of Ethan's coat, her breath trembling. Please don't let them take me, she whispered so quietly only he could hear. Ethan looked at the men again. If her parents owed a debt, that doesn't make her your property. The heavy man stepped forward, trying to use his size to intimidate him. You want to cause trouble? You can't afford another fight, rancher. Everyone knows your ranch is falling apart. Ethan didn't flinch. She doesn't want to go with you. The tall man sneered. She doesn't get a choice. Ethan made his decision in that moment. He didn't have money. He didn't have power. But he had enough compassion to know he couldn't leave Lily behind. She's coming with me, he said firmly. I'll take responsibility for her. The men stiffened in surprise. Are you crazy? You can't just take her. She asked for my help, Ethan replied. If she wants to come with me, that's her decision. Lily nodded quickly, barely daring to breathe. The heavy man cursed under his breath. Fine, but don't come running back when she causes you trouble. We're done with her anyway. It was a lie. Ethan could tell they were only backing down because people nearby were starting to watch the argument. The men glared at him one last time before turning away angrily. Ethan waited until they were out of sight before he spoke to Lily again. Are you sure you want to come with me? He asked gently. Yes, she said without hesitation. I can work. I won't be a burden, just please don't leave me here. Ethan studied her. She was thin, hungry, tired, maybe no older than 17 or 18. She looked like someone who had forgotten what safety felt like. Ethan didn't know how he would take care of her. His ranch already struggled to support one person, but he couldn't walk away now, not after seeing the fear in her eyes. All right, he said softly. You can come, but we'll go slow, and you'll be safe. Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but she tried to wipe them away quickly as if she was ashamed of showing emotion. Ethan helped her climb onto his old mare, then took the reins and began walking beside her. The road home was long, but Lily didn't complain once. She watched the desert quietly, as if amazed by the open sky. Ethan glanced at her from time to time. She sat straight, but her hands trembled every now and then. He wondered what she had gone through to become this afraid. As the sun began to set, the ranch came into view. A humble home, a few fences, a barn with missing boards, and wide land that needed more care than Ethan could give alone. He worried if bringing her here was the right thing. But when he looked up and saw Lily staring at the ranch with a small, hopeful expression, he felt something shift inside him. Maybe this wasn't a burden. Maybe this was the beginning of something different. Maybe she needed the ranch as much as the ranch needed her. And maybe Ethan's life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. The road back to Ethan's ranch was long, but Lily didn't say a word during the entire ride. She sat on the old mare with her hands tight around the saddle horn, as if she didn't want to do anything that might look wrong. Ethan walked beside the horse, holding the reins and glancing up at her every now and then to make sure she didn't fall. The girl looked tired, more tired than anyone her age should ever look. As they reached the ranch, the sun was dipping behind the hills, painting the sky orange and gold. Ethan helped Lily down from the horse. She stood quietly, looking around as if she couldn't believe this place was real. The land was rough, the fences old, and the house small, but something about the open space seemed to calm her. "You can rest inside," Ethan said gently. "You must be hungry. I'll cook something simple." "You don't have to," Lily whispered. "It's fine," he replied with a small smile. "Come on." Inside the house, Lily paused at the doorway. She looked nervous, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. Ethan nodded to reassure her, and she stepped in carefully, almost silently. The house was plain. Just a table, 2 chairs, a worn-out sofa, and a small kitchen area with basic supplies. But it was clean and warm, which already made it better than the cold corners she had been sleeping in at the trading post. Ethan set a pot on the stove and started cooking some soup. It wasn't much, just vegetables and beans, but it was warm and filling. Lily watched him from the corner of the room, her hands folded in front of her, unsure of what to do. "You can sit," Ethan said. "You don't need to keep standing." She hesitated, then slowly sat down at the table. Ethan placed the bowl in front of her. She looked at it like she hadn't seen a proper meal in weeks. "Go ahead," Ethan said softly. She took a small spoonful, then another, and then she ate faster, as if she was afraid someone might take the food away. Ethan didn't say anything. He just let her eat until the bowl was empty, and even then she stared at it with quiet surprise, as though she didn't believe she had been allowed to finish it. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded. "You're safe here. You don't owe me anything." Lily looked down at her hands. I don't know how to be safe anymore." "You will learn," Ethan replied gently. After she finished eating, Ethan showed her where she could sleep. There was a small room near the back of the house with a simple bed, a blanket, and a little wooden chest. Lily touched the blanket lightly, as if checking whether it was real. "This is for me?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "You can rest now. You're tired." Lily nodded and sat on the bed, her shoulders finally relaxing for the first time since he met her. Ethan left the room quietly, giving her space. The next morning, Ethan woke early as usual. He stepped outside to start the morning chores, expecting to work alone. But when he reached the barn, he found Lily already there, sweeping the floor with a broom that looked almost too big for her. She stopped immediately when she saw him. "I wanted to help," she said quickly. "I can work. I don't want to be a burden." Ethan shook his head. "You don't have to do everything." "I want to," she insisted gently. "Please let me." Her eyes were filled with determination. Ethan realized she wasn't doing this out of fear. She wanted to be useful, to have a place where she mattered. So he nodded. "All right," he said. "If you want to help, I won't stop you." Lily smiled a little. It was small, but it was the first real smile he had seen from her. For the next few hours, they worked side by side. Ethan repaired a broken fence while Lily fed the chickens. She carried the bucket with both hands, taking slow steps so she wouldn't spill any grain. When the cattle needed water, she helped draw the buckets from the well, even though her arms trembled from the weight. She rested only when Ethan told her to. By midday, she was sweating and breathing hard, but her eyes were bright. Ethan made lunch and handed her a plate. Lily ate quietly, then looked up at him. "You really don't want anything from me?" she asked softly. "Lily," Ethan said, "I don't want anything except for you to feel safe and free. That's all." She looked down, her eyes shining slightly. "Nobody ever said that to me before." Ethan felt a quiet sadness in his chest. What kind of life had she lived that such simple kindness felt strange to her? When afternoon came, Ethan finally asked her the question he had been holding in since yesterday. "Lily, those two men at the trading post, why were they keeping you there?" She hesitated at first, her hands trembling slightly. She stared at the barn door as if remembering something she didn't want to remember. Ethan waited patiently. "They said my parents owed them money," she finally whispered. "When my mother got sick, they helped with food and supplies. My parents promised to pay them back later, but they never could. My mother passed away. My father tried to work the debt off, but he didn't make it either." Ethan listened quietly, not interrupting. "They told me I had to stay and work in their place," Lily continued. "I cleaned the stalls, washed clothes, cooked, anything they told me to do. They said if I tried to leave, they would say I stole from them. Everyone believed them because they were traitors. I was just a girl with nothing." Ethan clenched his jaw. That kind of control wasn't right, even if the law didn't always protect people like Lily. "How long were you there?" he asked. "Almost 2 years," she said softly. "I tried to escape twice. They found me. They said each time I tried to run, the debt grew. I was scared. I thought I would be there forever." "Why did you come to me?" Ethan asked gently. She lifted her eyes to him. "Because when I saw you talking to the horse seller, you didn't look like the others. You didn't look cruel or selfish. You looked tired but kind. And I thought, maybe you would listen. Maybe you would help me." Ethan felt something heavy and warm settle in his heart. He didn't think of himself as anything special, but Lily had put all her trust in him at the moment she needed help most. "You did the right thing," Ethan told her softly. Just then, the sound of hooves approached. Lily's face turned pale. Ethan stepped outside to see who it was. The sheriff rode toward the ranch, his horse kicking up dust. Ethan felt a sudden tension in his chest. He didn't know what this meant, but he had a bad feeling. "Ethan," the sheriff called out as he reached the gate. "Need to talk to you." Ethan nodded calmly. "What's this about?" The sheriff dismounted. "Those traders from the post came into town this morning. They said you took a girl from them. Said you kidnapped her." Lily gasped behind Ethan. He stepped in front of her instinctively. "I didn't take her," Ethan said firmly. "She came willingly. She asked for help." The sheriff sighed. "I'm not accusing you, Ethan, but I need to hear the full story." Ethan turned to Lily. "You don't have to be afraid. Tell him the truth." Lily stepped forward slowly. Her hands shook, but she lifted her chin. "I asked him to help me," she said quietly. "Those men kept me because they wanted free work. They lied about a debt. I was never paid. They never let me leave. I wasn't safe with them." The sheriff listened carefully. He seemed unsure at first, but as Lily continued to describe her life, his expression softened. Her voice trembled, but remained steady as she spoke about long days, harsh orders, hunger, and the fear of running away. Ethan watched her with quiet admiration. She was stronger than she looked. When she finished, the sheriff nodded slowly. "I believe her," he said at last. "Those men have been collecting debts from half the county. This isn't the first complaint I've heard. I'll handle them." Lily let out a shaky breath, relief flooding her face. "But Ethan," the sheriff added, "you'll need to keep her safe for now. They're angry, and I don't trust them." Ethan nodded. "I'll protect her." After the sheriff rode away, Lily turned to Ethan with tears in her eyes. "I thought they would take me back," she whispered. "Not while I'm here," Ethan said gently. "You're not alone anymore." Lily wiped her eyes and nodded, a soft smile forming as she looked out across the ranch. For the first time, she felt like this place wasn't just a temporary shelter, it felt like the beginning of a new life. And Ethan, watching her quietly, realized that bringing Lily home had changed the silence of his ranch. He no longer felt the heavy loneliness that had followed him for years. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed that their story was just beginning. The next few days passed in a quiet rhythm that felt strangely peaceful to Ethan, something he hadn't felt in a long time. For years, he had been used to working alone, hearing only the sounds of cattle, the creaking of old wood, and the wind across the fields. But now he heard another sound, Lily's soft footsteps, her gentle humming while she worked, and sometimes the faint laugh she tried to hide when something small went right. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it brought warmth into the house and ranch. Every morning before the sun rose, Lily was already awake. She moved around the kitchen quietly, trying not to disturb Ethan. She made simple breakfasts, bread warmed on the pan, eggs when they had them, and sometimes a hot drink made from herbs she found near the creek. She didn't know much about cooking, but she tried hard, following every small instruction Ethan gave her. She watched him closely when he showed her something new, as if each little skill was precious. Ethan noticed how careful she was with everything. Whenever she touched something, she handled it like it might break, or like she might get in trouble if she made a mistake. He wondered how long she had lived under fear to behave like that. One morning, when she placed a warm plate on the table, Ethan smiled and said, "Lily, you don't have to work this hard every day." She looked confused. "I want to," she said softly. "I like helping." He understood. Helping made her feel useful. It made her feel like she belonged. After breakfast, they went outside together to finish the chores. The ranch was still weak, but with 2 people working instead of 1, progress came faster. Ethan repaired the roof of the barn while Lily gathered fallen branches from the yard. When Ethan found her trying to lift a heavy plank that was twice her size, he quickly walked over. "You don't have to hurt yourself," he said. She looked up at him. "I'm not hurt," she replied. "I can do it if I try slowly." He shook his head with a smile. "Slow or not, that one's too heavy." She stepped aside quietly, but he saw a small smile on her face again. She liked being part of the work, even if she couldn't do everything. Some afternoons, Ethan caught her standing outside and looking at the wide-open fields. Her eyes softened whenever the breeze touched her hair. She seemed amazed by the freedom around her. Once Ethan asked her what she was thinking, and she answered, "It's strange. I've never had space before. It feels big." Ethan understood. To someone who lived trapped for years, the open sky itself could feel like a new beginning. One day, Ethan showed Lily how to milk the cow. She watched carefully as he demonstrated, her expression focused. When she tried, she squeezed too hard and the cow kicked the bucket over. Lily gasped and stepped back. "I broke it. Sorry, I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice shaking. Ethan placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. Happens to everybody. She just got startled. You didn't do anything wrong." Lily stared at the spilled milk, then at him, surprised that he wasn't angry. Slowly she nodded, and they tried again together. This time she was gentler, and soon a small, steady stream filled the bucket. Lily's eyes lit up. She smiled, this time without hiding it. Moments like that slowly healed something inside her, but not every moment was peaceful. Sometimes, in the middle of the workday, Lily would suddenly freeze when she heard a loud noise. A slamming door, a dropped bucket, or even Ethan's voice calling her name too quickly would make her flinch. Ethan always paused, giving her time to breathe. She would close her eyes, hold her chest, and whisper to herself that she was safe. She tried to hide these moments, but Ethan always noticed. One afternoon, the sheriff returned. Ethan and Lily were outside repairing the chicken coop when the horse's footsteps approached again. Lily stiffened immediately, her hands tightening on the fence. Ethan stood beside her protectively. The sheriff greeted them politely. "Don't worry, I'm not here for trouble," he said. "I wanted to inform you that I spoke to the traders. I checked their records, their claims, everything. They had no legal right over the girl." Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly, though she didn't speak. "I also warned them to stay away from this ranch," the sheriff continued. "They didn't like it, but they don't have much choice. Just be careful, Ethan. A man doesn't lose that kind of control without getting angry." "We will be," Ethan said. The sheriff tipped his hat and rode away. Lily exhaled slowly once he was gone. Ethan noticed her shaking hands and waited until she calmed down. "You're safe here," he said again quietly. "I know," she whispered. "I'm just not used to it." Later that week, Lily tried to cook dinner on her own for the first time. Ethan had gone to town to buy supplies, and she wanted to surprise him. She gathered vegetables, chopped them carefully, and tried to make stew the same way Ethan had shown her. But the fire burned too hot, the pot boiled over, and she dropped the spoon on the floor twice. By the time Ethan returned, she was standing in the kitchen with tears in her eyes, certain she had ruined everything. He stepped inside, smelled the burnt stew, and saw Lily standing there looking miserable and embarrassed. "I wanted to do something nice," she said in a small voice, "but I messed it up." Ethan walked over, took a taste from the pot, and nodded. "It's a little burnt," he said honestly, "but it's still food." Lily sniffed. "You're just trying to make me feel better." "Maybe," Ethan said with a small laugh, "but it's true." She looked up at him then, her eyes full of emotion. Slowly, she let out a soft laugh, too. It was the first time he heard real laughter from her, not just a tiny smile. That sound filled the small kitchen with warmth. Later that night, as they sat outside on the porch watching the stars, Lily spoke again. "Ethan," she said quietly, "why are you being so kind to me? You don't even know me." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Because everyone deserves kindness, and because you needed help." She nodded but looked unsure. "But I'm not giving anything in return." "You don't have to," he said simply. Lily didn't argue. She just looked out at the night sky, her face soft with gratitude. Over the next week, Lily worked harder than ever. She cleaned the house, helped fix the barn roof, planted small seeds in the old garden, and learned how to feed the cattle without getting scared. Ethan noticed that the ranch, which had felt dull and lifeless before, now felt alive again. Even the animals seemed calmer around Lily. Ethan also noticed something changing inside himself. He talked more. He found himself explaining little things to Lily just to see her curious expression. He found himself watching her from afar sometimes, making sure she was safe, and feeling a quiet peace when she smiled. The loneliness that had pressed on him for years felt lighter. But not everything was easy. Trouble returned sooner than Ethan expected. One afternoon, while Ethan and Lily were planting new seeds near the garden, a wagon stopped at the end of the dirt road. Lily froze instantly. Ethan stood up and narrowed his eyes. The wagon was familiar. Two men stepped down, the same traders from the post. Anger surged inside Ethan, but he stayed calm. Lily backed away behind him, trembling. "We're not here to take her," the tall man said, lifting his hands. "We just want to talk." Ethan's voice was firm. "Whatever you have to say, say it from there." The heavy man stepped forward. "Look, we don't want trouble with the law, but people are talking. They're saying you took her without permission. If word spreads, this could make things bad for you. We're offering a way out. Just return her, and we'll forget the whole thing." "She doesn't belong to you," Ethan said. "She owes us," the heavy man argued. "She owes you nothing," Ethan snapped. "Not work, not time, nothing." The tall man's eyes hardened. "Then we'll go to the sheriff again." "Go ahead," Ethan said calmly. "He already knows the truth." The men exchanged a frustrated glance. They climbed back into the wagon and left, but not before the heavy man pointed a finger at Ethan. "This isn't over!" Lily's breath came fast, panic rising inside her. Ethan turned to her immediately. They won't take you, he said softly. Do you understand? Tears filled her eyes. They're going to make your life hard because of me. Lily, Ethan said gently, you're worth any trouble. She looked up at him with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. She wiped her tears quickly and stood beside him, trying to stay brave. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She walked onto the porch and found Ethan sitting there quietly. Do you ever regret helping me? She asked. Ethan shook his head. Not for a moment. She swallowed hard. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, he said softly. Just live freely. That's enough. Lily nodded, her heart full. Ethan didn't realize it, but that night marked a turning point for her. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was beginning to dream. And though trouble still lingered, something new had formed between them. Trust, hope, and a quiet bond that was growing stronger every day. Their story was far from over, and both of them could feel it. The next morning came with a quiet heaviness in the air. Ethan stepped outside to begin the day's chores, but he couldn't stop thinking about the wagon that had appeared the day before. He knew the traders weren't finished. Men like that didn't give up easily, especially when their pride was hurt. He didn't want Lily to worry, but he also didn't want to lie to her. Trouble was coming. He just didn't know when. Lily came outside a few minutes later, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Even with fear still living somewhere inside her, she looked healthier now. She had color in her cheeks, and her movements were less hesitant. She walked with more confidence, though she still glanced around every now and then as if checking that no danger was near. Morning, she said quietly. Morning, Ethan replied with a warm smile. You slept? She nodded. A little. I kept thinking about what happened yesterday. I'm sorry if I caused trouble. You didn't, Ethan said firmly. They did. Lily looked down but didn't argue. She helped him with chores, feeding the chickens and carrying small buckets of water to the garden. The sun rose higher, warming the ranch with soft, golden light. For a moment, everything felt peaceful again. But it didn't last long. Near noon, dust rose in the distance, another rider approaching. Lily stiffened instantly, dropping the bucket she was carrying. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. It's all right, he said gently. I'm here. As the rider grew closer, Ethan recognized him. It was the sheriff again. Lily exhaled, though she still looked nervous. The sheriff pulled his horse to a stop and stepped down. Ethan, Lily, he greeted calmly. I came to talk. Nothing bad. Ethan motioned for him to continue. I had more time to look into what those traders were claiming, the sheriff said. They've been running the same trick on several families. Fake debts, illegal work demands. They also threaten people to stay quiet. Lily froze. They did that to others too? She asked softly. Yes, the sheriff said. You're not the only one. Ethan felt anger rise inside him, but he stayed quiet and let the sheriff speak. I spoke with the judge in the next town, the sheriff continued. If Lily is willing to share her story officially, we can charge the traders for fraud and unlawful treatment. They won't have power over her anymore. Lily's hands began to shake. It wasn't fear of the law. It was fear of facing the truth she had tried to escape for so long. Do I have to speak in front of a lot of people? She asked. The sheriff shook his head. Just me, the judge, and a clerk. No crowd. You'll be safe. Lily looked at Ethan, silently asking for guidance. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for, Ethan said softly. But if you want to be free forever, this is the way. She stood quietly for a moment, then she nodded slowly. I'll do it. I don't want them to hurt anyone else. The sheriff smiled kindly. You're brave. We'll go tomorrow morning. I'll come pick you both up. He rode away, and Lily stood still for a long time. Ethan waited until she finally spoke again. I didn't know I could be this scared, she whispered. You're not alone anymore, Ethan replied. We'll face it together. That night, Lily barely slept. Ethan could hear her moving in her room, pacing softly. Before dawn, he found her sitting on the porch, hugging her knees, watching the sky lighten. She didn't turn to him, but she spoke in a quiet voice. I keep thinking about when I first saw you at the trading post. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. You did, Ethan said. I didn't think you would listen, she whispered. But you did. Ethan sat beside her. Because you deserve someone to listen. Lily looked at him then, her eyes full of emotion. Thank you. When morning came, the sheriff arrived and drove them to the town courthouse. It wasn't a grand place, just a simple building with wooden walls and a creaking door. But to Lily, it felt like the biggest place she had ever entered. Her hands trembled as she walked inside, but Ethan stayed close, offering quiet support. The judge was an older woman with calm eyes. She listened patiently as Lily told her story. Lily spoke slowly at first, her voice shaking, but Ethan stayed within sight, giving her strength. The more she spoke, the steadier her voice became. She talked about the long hours of work, the fear, the lies the traders told, and the hopelessness she felt. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. The judge nodded gently. You're safe now, she said, and what those men did was wrong. We will take action. The sheriff placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. You did well. Lily let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. She looked at Ethan, and he smiled proudly. The judge asked Ethan a few questions. How he found Lily, why he brought her home, and whether she was treated well. Ethan answered honestly, and the judge seemed satisfied. You've given her a chance at a better life, the judge said. Take care of her. Ethan nodded. With the decision made, the sheriff promised to deliver charges to the traitors. They would face punishment, and Lily would never have to live under their shadow again. When they returned to the ranch later that day, Lily stepped down from the wagon and looked around the land with new eyes. It wasn't just a place she had run to, it was truly her home now. She walked toward the house, feeling lighter, almost as if a heavy weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. Ethan followed her quietly. You okay? He asked. She nodded. I'm free. The word sounded strange to her, but beautiful. You always should have been, Ethan said softly. Days passed, and something shifted between them, something gentle and warm. Lily moved around the ranch with a growing confidence. She didn't flinch as often. She laughed more easily. She took pride in her work, planting new seeds in the garden, mending old clothes, and helping with the animals. One afternoon, Lily surprised Ethan by fixing a broken gate on her own. She had watched him do it before and remembered each step. When Ethan saw the repaired gate, he turned to her in surprise. You did this? He asked. Lily blushed a little. I tried. It's good work, Ethan said honestly. She smiled, a full, bright smile that warmed his heart. As weeks turned into months, the ranch grew stronger. The garden sprouted new green life. The cattle looked healthier. The fences stood straighter. And the house, once lonely, now felt alive with soft light and laughter. One evening, as the sun set in soft orange tones, Lily and Ethan stood outside watching the horizon. The air was calm and the quiet felt comforting instead of empty. Ethan, Lily said softly, thank you for giving me a home. Ethan looked at her, his voice gentle. You made it a home. She looked at him with eyes full of meaning, gratitude, trust, and something warm that had been growing slowly for months. I don't know what I would have become if you hadn't helped me, she whispered. You became strong, Ethan said. All I did was give you a place to rest. Lily took a deep breath, letting the quiet settle around them. The sky darkened, stars appearing one by one. She turned toward him again, her voice soft but steady. Can I stay here? Not because I need a place, But because I want to? Ethan's heart softened. Yes, Lily, as long as you want. She smiled, a smile filled with emotion and peace. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. From that day on, they worked not as a rescuer and a runaway, but as two people building a new life side by side. The ranch thrived, not because the land magically changed, but because the loneliness that once filled it had been replaced with quiet hope and companionship. Ethan often thought back to the day he rode out to buy a tired old horse. He never imagined he would return with something far more precious. A girl with a wounded past, a brave heart, and a gentle presence that brought life back to a dying ranch. And Lily knew that the moment she whispered, "Please take me instead," she hadn't just escaped her past. She had stepped into a future she never believed she could have. Together, they created a home where both of them healed, grew, and found happiness. A ranch that once struggled now stood strong. A man who once lived alone now had someone to share his days with. And a girl who once lived in fear finally lived in freedom. Their story wasn't about rescue alone. It was about how two broken lives found strength through each other and how hope quietly grew in the most unexpected place.